Hey everybody, you're listening to the Everything Ham Radio podcast. This is episode number 60. Today we're going to be talking about QRP, what it is, radios you can use for it, antennas, and so on and so forth. We're going to talk about some blog posts that I found, and we're going to talk about some events and contests, as well as some hamfests over the next 2 weeks, and wrap it up with some news from around the hobby. So stay tuned. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Everything Ham Radio podcast. My name is Curtis, my call sign is Kilo 5 Charlie Lima Mike, and I am your host for this podcast. This podcast is released every Thursday. You can find us at facebook.com/Everything Ham Radio. That's my Facebook page. You can also find a group that I'm trying to get going. It's got almost 50 people have joined it. It's so awesome. I've had some great participation here lately. You can find that at everythinghamradio.com/groups/everythinghamradio. Now, why do you ask, why do you have a page and a group? Well, the reason I decided to go with a group is because I realized that a page, you really can't interact really well with everybody, and I really want to get to know each and every one of y'all. I want to know my listeners, and I want y'all to be able to talk amongst each other, and that's kind of hard to do with a page. So even though I have, like, I don't know, 250, 300 people or better likes on the Facebook page, I really want to kind of switch over maybe to the group more to conversate between me and y'all, my listeners. So I want to go over to the group, and I want to start doing some stuff. And one of the things that I'm going to start doing is I'm going to have a weekly Facebook listener question, or podcast listener question. Last week's question was, what does your QSL card look like? Unfortunately, I didn't have anybody post a picture of their QSL card. So, I don't know if I just didn't get the word out good enough, or if those that didn't have QSL cards or what. But nobody posted pictures. So, I'm going to try this again. And this one is going to be not so much a picture, but it's going to be a question. And y'all can answer it however you want. One word, a paragraph, whatever you want. But the question is, what is your favorite mode to operate? Now, do you like QRP, like this episode is about? Do you like digital, like RTTY or PSK31? Do you like just repeater operation? Do you like CW? Do you like, what is your favorite mode to operate? That's what I want to know about. And so just head on over there to the Facebook group, facebook.com/group/Everything Ham Radio. There's a link in the show notes to the group, and leave your favorite mode of operation there. So let's see, what else am I on? I'm on YouTube. You can find me at youtube.com/Everything Ham Radio, and I'm also on Twitter, which is probably where I'm most active at. And that is at K5CLM. So, before we get started, you can find the show notes for today's episode, which will have a bunch of the links that we're going to be talking about in today's episode, as well as some additional information. You can find that at everythinghamradio.com/podcast/60. That's number 60. So, now that all that's out of the way, I want to let y'all know of something that happened to me this week. I actually got a snail mail letter. I mean, can you believe that? How often do you get a snail mail letter anymore? And this one, it really kind of piqued my interest because it was just a plain regular letter envelope. It wasn't a package. I hadn't bought something, so it was totally out of the blue. And it was just a letter. And the name on the front I didn't recognize. It wasn't somebody that I talked to on the radio, and it had a call sign on it. But I hadn't talked to him on the radio. I haven't had any kind of correspondence with him beforehand, so I really had no idea what it was. So I thought, maybe just a fan letter or something. And this letter, and I'm not going to go into specifics of it, because that's probably really not my place, but the letter itself was from a Larry Whitley. His call sign is Kilo David 5 Charlie Young India. So Larry, like I said, I'm not really going to go into specifics, but one of the things that really kind of, let's see, what's the word I'm looking for? It really kind of maybe touched my heart, I guess you could say, was that he was thanking me for putting my podcast on iHeartRadio. Now, if you didn't know that it's on there, it is on there. So if you have iHeartRadio in your car, you can actually listen to it on iHeartRadio. Just search for Everything Ham Radio in iHeartRadio, and you can listen to it. But anyways, he said that iHeartRadio is the only place that he has access to listen to podcasts, and he stumbled across my program. I think it was last year or so, and he had listened to several of them. And then for some reason, he didn't have access to iHeartRadio anymore. And several months later, my iHeartRadio popped back up for him where he was able to access it. And he basically, from my understanding, basically just kind of binge listened. And he's been listening so far, and he told me quite a bit about himself and his history and stuff like that. So thank you, Larry, for sending me that letter and sharing with me all that, your history, and just thank you for the letter. I mean, that meant a lot to me. So I hope everything works out for you, and maybe one day we can talk on the air. So Larry, 73 to you. Let's see. Another thing that I want to kind of reach out to y'all on, who knows anything about Linux? Is any of y'all that are listeners, do you know anything about Linux? I have a old Dell PC, and I thought, hey, I'll get the Debian ham radio operating system and download it, and use that for my ham station, use that for recording these, and basically just kind of an all-around computer for my ham shack / recording studio. Unfortunately, I got it installed. It's up and running. I'm actually looking at the screen right now that has the little, Windows-looking desktop, but I can't get any further. I mean, I have all the programs I can get into, and it's all great, all fine and dandy, but I can't connect to the internet. I mean, it's all over Wi-Fi out here, and even with my new data package on my cell phone is actually what I'm getting internet for now, or through now. But I can't for the life of me figure out how to get the Debian to recognize my little Wi-Fi adapter. And I don't have access to it, like through an Ethernet card or something like that. I'm trying to figure out how to work it. But if anybody y'all know anything about Linux or Debian in particular, and especially the ham radio, the ham radio variant of Debian, please shoot me an email at k5clm@everythingham.radio and help me out if at all possible. I really would like to get this up and running because I want to put some in the 2 ham sticks that I have up on the side of my building if I can't get my tower up, and my dual band antenna so I can have my dual band radio in here, and also eventually set up like a mesh network as well, because I'm sitting up on top of a hill and it's really easy to see a long ways. So there's several things that I want to do, and this computer is what's kind of holding me up. And on top of that, I really would like to install Audacity in this computer so I can use it to record my podcast and stuff as well. Yeah, that's what I'm trying to do. So any of y'all know anything about it, shoot me an email and kind of point me in the right direction, or at least a link on where I can look at stuff and maybe figure it out by myself. Let's see, any other announcements? One other thing. Back, I don't know, like 25 episodes ago, maybe a little bit more, I had like 4 episodes where I did interview style episodes, And I really liked doing this. I really liked doing the interview style, because it was less research maybe for me. And it didn't take me 2 days to figure out what I was going to say and to learn about stuff and, maybe say something wrong in my episode. So I really like to do that. And what I'm thinking about now that I have this new internet connection is maybe trying to do a split type thing. Have 1 week where it's an interview style and 1 week where it's solo. Maybe I'll just go with an interview style, and when I can't find somebody to talk to, then I'll do it a solo. I haven't quite decided yet, but I am kind of going to go more, I'm going to try to go more towards the interview style, just to kind of get more interaction between me and somebody else. I mean, talking to yourself or talking to your computer screen, it gets kind of old and kind of boring. And I know that having somebody else to talk to on a podcast episode makes it funner for y'all, right? So I'm going to try and do that. So if any of y'all have if y'all are like, specialist in a certain field of ham radio or something, let me know if you'd like to be on my podcast. I got several things scheduled for the next month and a half or so. I'm looking for somebody to talk to about RTTY and PSK31. I have somebody lined up for not next episode, but the episode after that for DX beaconing. I'm lining up somebody with that. I've already made contact with somebody and they're getting back to me. I'm going to do some stuff on, I don't remember what else. I got it in my list, but I don't have it in front of me. So, but anyways, if any of y'all out that are listening are like a guru of some function of amateur radio, shoot me an email if you'd like to be a guest on my podcast. Again, my email is k5clm@everythinghamradio.com. Okay, so that pretty much wraps up for the announcements. Let's go ahead and move on with the topic of today, which is QRP. Now, what does QRP stand for? QRP is a Q code, and Q codes are basically, they're used in other branches of radio, so to speak, but in the amateur radio community, QRP basically means operating with reduced power. And in amateur radio, it typically means operating with less than 5 watts and typically around 1 watt or maybe even less. So this kind of gives the operator a whole new set of challenges to making contacts, to making sure their station is set up correctly, finding equipment, and in some ways really, really cheap equipment. I mean, I found a kit that you can actually buy for like under $10, and it only transmits like 500 milliwatts, but hey, that gets you on HF, it works you QRP, and granted there is some commercial radios out there, and we're going to talk about radios and stuff here a little bit later, but QRP is just, it's like the ultimate challenge, I guess maybe you could say. And it takes a lot of patience, and it takes a lot of kind of pushing through the mud, so to speak, but it can be very rewarding. Because operators that work QRP, they have to, deal with things like weak signals. If you're a QRP station and you're talking to a QRP station, then you have to kind of, both y'all are actually really struggling to listen to transmission. They have to worry about band conditions. I have 1 watt that I'm transmitting from. I'm not going to go as far as somebody with 100 watts or 1,000 watt linear amplifier. I'm just not going to, because I don't have the oomph to do it. There is certain times and certain instances where you can actually talk around the world on 1 watt. I think like the longest radio transmission on it was like 1, I want to say it's 1 microwatt. And it was on 10 meters, and I want to say that I read it was somewhere around 2,000 miles or something like that. So, I mean, anything is possible with radio, especially with amateur radio. anything that's possible. It just takes the patience and the persistence to make those contacts more so than, you working with 100 watts or more. Some of the things that a QRP operator has to worry about is antenna matching. If you have a antenna that you're using and, it doesn't match your radio great, very good, then you're going to have you're going to have losses there. Your coax is another thing you have to look at. If you have, if you're running RG58 going up to your antenna and it's, 50 feet away or more, you're going to have major line loss there. So that 1 watt that you're transmitting is now going to be like a quarter watt. So there's several things that a QRP operator has to make sure that they have correctly in order to really work really well. Now, I'm not saying you can't use, the RG58. I really wouldn't recommend it. Go with maybe like RG8 Mini or something, but keep your runs very short. And typically this is more along the lines for, portable stations where you can set up an antenna at 5 feet or something like that on a tripod and work 10 feet away. So your coax length is, 10, 12 feet, something like that. So there is more that you need to think about when you're working QRP over when you're working on a quote unquote regular radio. So, on top of your coax, you also really need to think about your antenna. And I mentioned this a little bit ago with antenna matching, but you really need to pay attention to what your antenna is doing because you're going to have your antenna basically will amplify your signal. But if it's not matched really well, it's not going to amplify really well. And it's not going to tune up to your radio, so you're going to have losses there. Your radio's not going to put out as much power as it would if you had a good matched antenna. Now, saying that, QRP is very forgiving when it comes to mismatched antennas. You don't have to have the perfect antenna matching. You can use the top run of a fence, a wire fence, or a flagpole, or a gutter, or something like that. It doesn't have to be perfect because you only have 5 watts or whatever to begin with, and say you lose half of your wattage through your coax, and you don't have any dB gain on your antenna, so you go from 5 watts to 2.5 watts. That's not that big of a difference. Whereas if you are operating 100 watts and you lose half your power because of your coax in your antenna, then you're dropped down to 50 watts. So that's a major difference between working QRP and working regular full power HF. So there is both flip sides to that. You want to make it as good as you can, but QRP is a lot more forgiving when it comes to line loss and comes to antenna matching. So just make sure you think about it. So something else that a QRP operator really needs to think about is, band conditions. Are you trying to make a contact on let's see. I'm probably going to get this backwards here because I never can remember it. I believe 40 meters is better in daytime and 80 meters is at night. If I'm not mistaken, I might be talking the other way around. But let's say that you're trying to make a contact in the middle of the night on 40 meters. And, you won't have the best band conditions. But if you try it on 80 meters, you will. So, taking into account band conditions is good. Are you trying to operate on 10 meters when there's not a lot of sunspots? And, sunspots are what makes the atmosphere ionize and makes your signal travel further, right? So, all these things you really need to think about. What about if you have a lot of QRM or what's meaning noise on the band, either locally or somewhere else? Is it causing interference in your signal, both going out and coming back? Do you have some kind of RF leak in your system that's causing noise to be generated on the receiver and you're not able to pick out somebody, or maybe you're getting noise on the transmitter and you're not getting the best signal out. So, all these things you really need to look at. Let's take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about radios for QRP. Alright, so I really would like to take this moment to thank my sponsor, West Mountain Radio. For those of you who don't know who they are, they have some awesome equipment that I've had the pleasure of using for over 15 years. They make several things like a rig blaster, a rig runner, and the DC-to-go boxes. I've talked a little bit about the rig blaster in previous episodes, as well as the rig runner a couple times, especially back in the mobile radio installation episode that we did. But today I really want to talk to you about the DC-to-go boxes, because these are really awesome. They're a neat little case that you can put a battery in it to protect your station floor from an unfortunate battery accident. However, there's so much more to it than just that. These boxes have mounted to the side of them two things, and on the boxes that I'm talking to y'all about today. One of which is a Super Power Gate PG40, and the other is a rig runner. Now, there's two separate pre-made boxes that I want to tell you about. One of them has a rig runner 4007U, and the other has a rig runner 4008. But before we go into those, let's talk about the PG40, Power Gate PG40. The Power Gate provides you a uninterruptible power supply in case you lose power. Now, basically what you do, you have your battery, you have a wire from your battery to the PG gate, or the power gate. You have a wire that comes from your power supply and a wire that goes out from it to your rig runner, to your station, or wherever it's going to go from there. And if you lose AC power, it will automatically switch to battery power, and you'll never be off the air. So that right there in and of itself is well worth the price of these things. Now, the two rig runners that they have on there, one of them is the rig runner 4008. It provides 40 amps of DC power coming in, spread out over 8 slots, and each slot is individually fused. The other one is the rig runner 4007U, which also gives you 40 amps coming in, but it's spread over only 7 slots. Now, if you need the 8th slot, go ahead and get the 4008. If you can do without the 8th slot, I highly recommend that you get the 4007U. And here's why. There's some extra features that are built into the 4007U that's not on the 4008. One of which is a digital load meter. It also has a USB charging port, a solid state push button on-off switch, and probably one of the best things of all is the automatic shutoff for high or low voltages. Both these things, like I said, are mounted to the side of the box, and all you have to do is drop a battery inside, hook your leads up to your the power gate and the rig runner and your station, and you are set to go. And like I said, both of these things are mounted to the side of the box, so it's basically like one self-contained little power box. Now, the box that has the 4008 is $249.95, and the one that has the 4007U is $269.95. Both of them are great deals. Like I said, if you don't need that extra slot, I highly recommend you spend that extra $20 and get the 4007U. However, if this price range is a little out of your price range, then you can customize it, and there is several others that are cheaper as well. So I have links to each one of these, as well as how to make your own custom DC-to-go box. Here's the kicker though, y'all. If you go to everythinghamradio.com/WMR, that's West Mountain Radio, WMR, it will take you to one of their pages where you can figure out or find out how to get a free gift with your purchase. Now, you get a USB port monitor with a purchase, and all you got to do is put in a coupon code at checkout. So make sure you head on over there and check that out. Find something that you like and please buy it. Let them know that you heard from them from the Everything Ham Radio podcast. And yeah, so let's get back to QRP. All right, so let's talk a little bit about QRP radios. Now, while most commercial HF radios nowadays have the option to operate QRP or at QRP levels, not all of them are great for QRP. Some of the regular HF radios might not have the best receiver, might not have the best filters, so on and so forth. So the next question that you need to ask yourself is, do you want to build your own QRP radio, or do you just want to buy a pre-made one? If you have a hand and plenty of patience, building one can be very rewarding, and you can get some really cheap ones that will work perfectly. I have a link, several links actually, in the show notes of today's episode, where you can get several of them for $10 or $15. The ARRL has several listings of kits or diagrams or schematics for QRP radios. One of them that is pretty common, from what I understand, is the Pixie 2 radio, and it costs less than $10. And it transmits, I believe it's like 500 milliwatts or like 1 watt or something like that. And it's great. You build it and get on the air, and away you go. Pacific Antenna has several QRP transmitter kits. I found a page that has a whole bunch of different both DIY and non-DIY radios, QRP radios. Yesterday I actually saw a tweet by somebody that had a link to a website called QRP Guys, and it has a whole bunch of QRP radios. So there is a bunch of information out there about QRP radios, kits that you can buy that'll give you everything you need, or just schematics where you can buy the individual components. If you don't, however, want to build a radio, there are several options. Elecraft makes some, Tentec makes some, Yaesu even makes a QRP battery operated radio. Probably the best and most popular radio is the Elecraft KX2 and KX3. Not only are these radios great QRP radios, but they're also extremely portable. The KX3 weighs about 1.5 pounds and is totally self-contained. It has the battery and everything, and transmits, I believe, like 10 watts, I think. The KX2 is even lighter than that. It weighs 13 ounces. Yeah, that's like less than a pound by like 3 ounces. So both of those radios have very high reviews on them. I've heard a lot of great stories about them. And I've included a link in the show notes to the ehem.net website that lists a review of probably every QRP radio out there. So if you can't find a review on there, then it probably doesn't have one. So there are, both ways to go, whether you build one or whether you buy one. There is good things and bad things for both. The KX2 and KX3 are rather spendy, but if you want a great radio for QRP, and this is great for like backpacking or soda activations or hiking or something like that, these radios are great. So whichever way you go, just make sure that you explore all your options. Okay, so next we're going to talk about antennas. Now, while having a good antenna is a good idea, when operating QRP, it's not as important to have one that is a good match. And I said this a little bit before. You can hook it to a fence or a gutter or a flagpole or something like that, and you might not have perfect SWRs, and you might have some loss to it. But when you're operating at QRP levels, 5 watts or less, losing half your power is not that big of a deal. However, you want to be able to put out as much power as possible, so if at all possible, get you an antenna that is going to have the best match for it. And one of those antennas is made by a good friend of mine, George Zafiropoulos. I probably butchered that name, but he is one of the co-host of the Ham Radio 360 Workbench podcast, and he makes the Pactenna Mini, a Pactenna and several variations of it. And these are great little antennas. I gave away one of them. It was one of my first giveaways back in like episode want to say like 15, 16, something like that. And he actually sent me one as well. So I actually still have one that hopefully I'm going to be putting up here pretty soon. But these are great little antennas, and they're reasonably priced. And when they're all wound up, they're about the size of your hand. And so, even though they are small in size, they are very big in heart. There is another radio antenna that I've heard of. They have some great reviews, and I know a lot of people use them, but for the life of me, I can't remember what it's called. It's something like a ring antenna or something like that. I was going to try and look it up before I did this recording, but we've had some sick kids and stuff like that, and I kind of dropped the ball a little bit. So there you have it. There is all about QRP. I know there's probably a lot more questions that y'all might have, so please make sure that you leave them in the comments below, and I will do my best to answer them for you. So I guess that about wraps it up. Let's go ahead and move on to our ham blog spotlight. Alright, so before we move on to the ham blog spotlight, I actually totally forgot about something here. It's time to announce the winner of the KB6NU study ebook giveaway. I had about 10, 12 entries, and the winner of the KB6NU No Nonsense Study Guide ebook giveaway is Jason Bennett, KA4JFB. So congratulations, Jason. I will be sending you an email shortly, probably Thursday evening or so, and I will be CCing Dan with the email as well, and he'll be getting in contact with you to get you those books. So congratulations, Jason Bennett, KA4JFB. That's Kilo Alpha 4 Juliet Foxtrot Bravo. All right, so now let's talk about the ham blog spotlight. I found a blog and a blog post that I read that has a lot to do with QRP, the topic of this episode. This blog is written by Richard AA400. That would be a fun CW call to send, AA400. He has several articles on his site. I don't know how long he's been doing it, but there's probably, probably 50 episodes or so dealing with different aspects of QRP operation. He talks about his experience with QRP, and mainly, like I said, he talks about QRP. The page that I found that is, I guess, that led me to his blog was one that was linked from the Wikipedia site dealing with QRP operation. And in this blog post, he talks about how he chose which radio would be best for him to operate on QRP, and I actually think he went with the KX3, if I'm not mistaken. So there is a link in the show notes of today's episode to that post. You can find his blog at hamradioqrp.com. Alrighty, so in our upcoming events for this episode, we actually don't have a whole lot of them. All of the times that I'm going to be saying in this segment are in Zulu time, so make sure that you adjust accordingly. From March 18th at 200 hours to the 20th at 200 hours is the BARTG HFRTTY contest. The 18th from 1200 hours to the 19th at 1200 hours is the Russian DX contest. March 18th from 1400 to 200 hours on the 19th is the Louisiana QSO party, my neighbors to the east. March 18th from 1400 hours to 200 hours on the 19th, and then followed from 1200 to 2400 hours on the 19th as well is the Virginia QSO party. March the 18th from 2000 hours to 2159 is the Feld Hell Sprint. March 20th from 100 hours to 300 hours is the Run for the Bacon QRP contest. There you go, QRP contest in an episode dealing with QRP. Okay, March the 21st from 1700 hours to the 22nd at 1700 hours. And then followed the following weekend, March 25th from 1700 to the 26th at 1700, is the CLARA Shatter Party. March the 22nd from 0 hours to 200 hours is the SKCC Sprint. And last but definitely not least, March 25th from 0 hours to 23:59 on the 26th is the CWWW WXP contest for single sideband. All the information that was taken in this segment was taken from the WA7BNM contest calendar, which you can find a link to in the show notes of today's episode. Alrighty, so what we lacked in contest for this episode, we make up for in hamfests. There's actually quite a bit of them over the next 2 weeks. So let's get started. First off, on the 17th, which will be tomorrow, we have the Fort Walton Beach Hamfest 2017 in Fort Walton Beach, Florida. On the 18th, we have the HamX 2017 in Calden, Ontario. Hamfest 2017 in Loomis, California. The Mahaska Hams Swap Meet in Oskaloosa, Iowa. The Michigan Crossroads Hamfest and Radio Swap in Kalamazoo Township, Michigan. Microhams Digital Conference 2017 Operating Specialty Convention in Redmond, Washington. The MOVARC Hamfest in Gallipolis, Ohio. The Scottsdale Spring Hamfest in Scottsdale, Arizona. Stewart Hamfest in Stewart, Florida. We have the Swap Fest in Georgetown, Texas. The Great Southern Hamfest in Thomasville, Georgia. And the West Texas Section Convention in Midland, Texas. On the 19th, we have the CVRC Hamfest in Henniker, New Hampshire. We have Hamfest 2017 in Jefferson, Wisconsin. The Southington, Connecticut Amateur Radio Association Flea Market in Southington, I guess that's how it's pronounced, Connecticut. Toledo Mobile Radio Association Hamfest and Computer Fair in Perrysburg, Ohio. And Winterfest in Annandale, Virginia. The next weekend, on the 24th, we have the Texas State Convention Greater Houston Hamfest in Rosenberg, Texas. On the 25th, we have the Charleston Hamfest and Computer Show in Charleston, West Virginia. The Fredfest Indoor Hamfest in Frederick, Maryland. Ides of March Hamfest in Union City, Tennessee. The MARK Sullivan Hamfest in Sullivan, Illinois. Midwinter Madness in Buffalo, Minnesota. The Springtime OARS Club Hamfest in Mount Vernon, Missouri. The Titusville Tailgate in Titusville, Florida. Utah Digital Communications Conference in Sandy, Utah. Yeah, you heard that right. Sandy, Utah. Sorry about that. That was wrong. And last but not least, on the 26th, we have the JSARS Hamfest by the Shore in Toms River, New Jersey. All these hamfests were taken from the ARRL Hamfest calendar, and you can find links to each of them as well as the full calendar in the show notes of today's episode. Alright, so first off in our news segment, we talk about a teen radio amateur is going to activate Iceland in his inaugural de-expedition. This came out in the ARRL newsfeed back on the 10th. 14-year-old Mason Mastrazo, KM4SII, of Clemens, North Carolina, will be on the air from Iceland as TF/KM4SII on March 13th through the 19th. So you got a couple more days to get this after this episode goes live. Activity will be on 40, 20, and 17 meters, single sideband only. Mason will be operating with a portable setup, is calling his Buddy Stick de-expedition to Iceland. He said on his TF/KM4SII page on QRZ.com that most operations will be from the village of Vik at the southernmost tip of Iceland, although he anticipates possible operation from Iceland's capital, Reykjavik. Gavik, not even going to pronounce that. If I am able to find a location to set up the vertical, he quotes. If he attracts a pileup, he may operate split. Even if I am very weak on your end, please try and give me a call anyways, he said. I will probably hear you better than you hear me. Mason will operate under Icelandic rule with local in-class restrictions, which offer access to HF, VHF, and UHF, but limit him to 100 watts. He will accept QSL cards to his home address and hopes to upload logs to the Logbook of the World and the Club Log, and maybe QRZ, he says. He expects to have internet and email access while in Iceland, and will post any updates to his TF/KM4SII page on QRZ.com. So, congratulations to Mason for his first de-expedition to Iceland. Kudos to you, and you're braver than I am. That's going to be kind of cold up there. Alright, so continuing with the youth area of amateur radio, Boy Scouts announced the 2017 Jamboree on the Air and Jamboree on the Internet theme, listed on the ARRL newsfeed on the 14th. Scouting World Jamboree on the Air and Jamboree on the Internet team has announced the theme for its fall JOTA and JOTI event. Quote, 60 years connecting scouts. The 2017 theme recognizes the event's beginning in 1957 and commemorates its growth in participation and the expanding communications channel activating this coming October. In addition to amateur radio, those channels include internet-based channels and other internet-based options, including social media, Scout Link, IRC chat server, Skype, and more. It also recognizes the goal of the event, connecting scouts so they can engage in conversation with other scouts across town and around the world, said JOTA coordinator Jim Wilson, K5ND. This allows them to discover geographical and cultural differences and similarities, plus they are exposed to the technology that makes all this happen. The JOTA 2017 logo contest is about to start. Plans for the 2017 include a simplified registration system. According to the World JOTA report in 2016, more than 1 million scouters in 156 countries and at 33,000 plus locations took part in the JOTA last fall. The number for U.S. participants were 10,700 for JOTA and 560 for JOTI. Wilson said there was a problem integrating those statistics in his final report. So we got the JOTA coming up real soon. I know I had a episode about it here several months ago, and if you have not participated in a Jamboree on the Air, if you have a local Boy Scout troop or Girl Scout troop, I highly recommend that you get involved with them now if you would like to participate in this, as well as helping them learn about amateur radio. Alright, so the last thing that I want to talk about, I'm sure that most of y'all have heard about the law that went into effect on January 1st in California that basically restricts any amateur radio operator from operating in his or her vehicle, unless of course you have Vox and a headset, and then you can because it's hands-free. But basically this law makes it where you can't use your hands to key up your microphone and talk on your radio. So on the 14th, an article was posted in the ARRL newsfeed, and it says that the ARRL is recommending that amateur radio be specifically excluded from a California statute prohibiting the use of, quote, wireless communications devices while driving. The ARRL Southwest Division Vice Director Marty Wool, N6VI, is taking point on an effort to revise the statute, known by its legislative bill number AB 1785. It was signed into law last September and took effect January 1st, amending the 23123.5 of the state's vehicle code. Quote, the ARRL has received a huge volume of inquiries and complaints about this statute in particular since its enactment. ARRL General Counsel Chris Imlay, W3KD, wrote, in a letter to Wool to provide guidance in amending the California statute. I would urge that you present this letter at any meeting you have with the California state legislature on this topic, thus to bring the issue contained herein to their attention. Emily pointed out that the prior state excluded amateur radio by definition. The new law, which completely replaced the earlier statute, never mentions amateur radio, but instead contains an open-ended definition of a, quote, electronic wireless device, communications device, the operation of which while driving is prohibited. According to the statute, this includes, but is not limited to, a broadband personal communication device, a specialized mobile radio device, a handheld device or laptop computer with mobile data access, a pager, or a two-way messaging device. Because of the not limited to language, such a device is whatever a law enforcement officer thinks might be included, and an amateur radio operator is not at all protected, Emily wrote. Such a broad definition could stymie even the most diligent law enforcement officer who might interpret the new vehicle code language more broadly than it was intended. Emily noted that radio amateurs provide emergency and public service communications on a volunteer basis, and said the FCC encourages amateur radio licensees to assist during disaster and emergencies. Radio amateurs have regularly used mobile two-way radio systems for the past 70 years, he says. The ARRL is aware of no evidence that such operation contributes to driver inattention, he stressed. Quite the contrary. Radio amateurs are public service-minded individuals who utilize their radio-equipped motor vehicles to assist others, and they are focused on driving in the execution of that function. Emily also cited a 2009 letter to ARRL from the National Safety Council stating that there was no evidence using amateur radio while driving is a significant risk, and that there is a reasonable basis for excluding amateur radio communications from the prohibition on mobile telephone operation and mobile text messaging while operating a motor vehicle. Citing a 1994 joint resolution of Congress, Emily pointed out that the policy of the United States is to encourage mobile amateur radio operation as a public benefit. Given the necessity of unrestricted mobile amateur radio communication, in order for the benefits of amateur radio to the public to continue to be realized, the ARRL urges California legislators to reconsider and amend AB 1785, either to more narrowly define the class of devices included in the prohibition, or alternatively, a specific exemption for amateur radio operators would suffice. So, what are y'all's opinion on that? What do y'all think about this law that went into effect? Personally, I think it's just crazy that you would limit the use of amateur radio operators because of the service that we provide in a disaster or emergency situation. We're there to help, not to hinder. And honestly, I can see sometimes, where your attention could be possibly diverted, if you're changing frequencies or something like that. But for the most part, you're just talking on a mic, and how is that any different from a law enforcement officer or a firefighter or an ambulance driver or something like that talking on their radio to their dispatch center or to other officers? We're there to help the public, and I don't think we should be included in this law. But let me know what y'all think in the show notes of today's episode or on the Facebook post. So that pretty much wraps up the news and pretty much the episode too. Alrighty, y'all. So I really would like to thank each and every one of y'all for listening to this episode of the Everything Ham Radio podcast. Again, I want to congratulate Jason Bennett, Kilo Alpha 4 Juliet Foxtrot Bravo, for winning the KB6NU ebook giveaway. That is the last prize that I had left over from the episode 50 celebration giveaway type thing. So I will, like I said, Jason, I will be getting in contact with you. Probably this evening, if you listen to it on Thursday evening, I'll be getting in contact with you, and I will CC Dan, KB6 and you, and he'll be getting in contact with you to get you a copy of whatever ebooks that you would like to have of his. Also, I want to mention, if you need QSL cards, make sure that you head over to the KB3IHF QSL card website. There is a link in the show notes of today's episode to order them. He has some great options, and he will custom make your very own QSL card. He also has several other items as well, some coffee mugs, mouse pads, and a whole bunch of other stuff. When you make your order, make sure that you tell him that you heard about him on the Everything Ham Radio podcast, and I will get a small advertising fee for sending you his way. So please make sure that you tell him that you heard it from me, and you can help support this podcast as well. I do have some things coming down the pipe. I'm not going to mention them just yet, but stay tuned to future episodes to find out what those are. I'm pretty excited with a couple of the things that I got planned. I'm actually going to start doing some interview style podcasts. One of them, which will be episode after next, we are going to be talking about the DX Beacon network. I have some upcoming ones on some HF digital communications like RTTY, PSK31, and so on and so forth. So if you are pretty good at those digital systems and you would like to be on this podcast, if you'd like to be interviewed by me about that topic, please shoot me an email at k5clm at everythinghamradio.com, and we'll see if we can get together and do an interview. So if you'd like to be on the podcast, just like I said, shoot me an email. If you have not done so already, please sign up for my email newsletter or my email mailing list. Basically, it just goes out pretty much just whenever I publish a new blog post or a new podcast episode. Is basically the only time you'll hear from me. I do send a couple random emails every now and then, but I promise not to spam you. There are several ways you can do it. There is a sign up form on the bottom of the show notes that you can fill out. You can also go to everythinghamradio.com /subscribe and sign up that way. Once you fill out the information and click on the sign me up button, you'll get an email from me with a verification link that you'll need to click on before you'll start getting emails from me. Also, if you would like to support this podcast, there are several ways you can do it. You can make a one-time donation through PayPal. You can become a per episode subscriber through Patreon, or you can simply shop on Amazon.com using my affiliate link. All information about that can be found on my support page at everythinghamradio.com /support. I guess that's pretty much it. You can find me on Facebook at facebook.com /everythinghamradio. That's my page. And like I said, I'm kind of switching over to the group more so than the page, since it's easier to talk with y'all, and it's more easier for y'all to talk to each other. And you can find that at facebook.com /groups /everythinghamradio. You can find me on YouTube at youtube.com /everythinghamradio. I mentioned a couple episodes ago that I was going to try and do some like a face cam type thing when I'm recording these. I'm not sure if I'm actually going to be able to do that just yet. I tried to do that with episode 58, and it just didn't work out very well. But I am going to try and get more than just the logo on the future episodes. I don't know if I'll actually make it or not, but I'm going to try. So please don't hold me to it if I don't get it. And last but not least, you can follow me on Twitter at K5CLM. Links to all these can be found on my website on the menu bar under social. And I guess that pretty much wraps it up. So I guess until next time, this is K5CLM signing out. 73, y'all.